Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and we're going to be talking about how to turn jams into plans and opportunities. So, when it comes to game jams, too many projects just get shelved before they reach their full potential. So, in this episode, we're going to explore how jams and small projects can become launchpads for some long term opportunity with the right support. So, whether it's from mentorship and incubation to funding, access, and marketing guidance, we're going to learn how structured programs are helping developers turn prototypes into business ready games and how you can do that too. So, that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey, everybody, and we're back. And today with us, I have Juliana Brito. Juliana, how's it going? And thanks so much for being here on the show today.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you very much for having me here. Super excited for this talk. I'm hoping we're going to have a blast.
Oh, we definitely will. And lots of reasons to that, folks. But first, if you don't know Juliana, she is the CEO of Game Jam Plus and also the same role in indiehero.io. And these are some really cool organizations that I'm going to give her an opportunity to share with a little bit more. And there's a bunch of other things she's involved with too. I'm sure she'll have some time to share that too. But one I wanted to call out as well is, the one of the organizations she's involved with is Active with Women in Games. And I'm really curious about this one, the YLAI Fellow, because that's something I'm not familiar with. So I'd love to hear more. But still, if you could share us a little bit more, about your role and what you're helping out with in, Game Jam Plus, Indie Hero, and the others I mentioned.
That's super cool. Thank you. So, our mission with everything we do is to democratize game knowledge. We think the game industry is big enough that everyone that wants to work in it should be able to do it.
Absolutely.
And our goal is to make possible for people to work with what they love, in our case, doing games. Like everything we build is with that mindset. I just want to put this mindset right there. And then I was talk about the how we're doing that at this moment. The how can always change. The why will continue with us.
I love that.
Yeah. So for Game Jam Plus, everything started with Game Jam Plus. Game Jam Plus is a game development marathon. I say marathon because a normal game jam's like a sprint, like 100-meter race sprint.
Yep.
But we do marathon here.
Nice.
So we start with the game jam, and then we have an incubation where we try to improve technically the product, and then acceleration parts of the thing that we try to make the product more commercial and sellable and so on. Like the whole thing takes like 8 months. And then we are today in 50 plus countries. We have had over 20,000 people that did this program with us. And so every year we have like 4,000 to 5,000 people that come and work with us. We always start in October, and we work with local organizers in more than 100 cities doing that with us. So that's the resume of Game Jam Plus.
Love it.
And then I just gonna go on and talk a little bit what Indie Hero does. Like Game Jam Plus is more like a nonprofit. And Indie Heroes are for-profit company because I also have to pay my bills.
Yes.
Also the people that work here. We all have to do that as responsible adults. So Indie Hero is like people can hire Indie Hero to do game jams for hire. We have worked with like Crazy Games, Game Forge, the German publisher. We have worked with Tale of Us as a German NGO. We have worked with Israeli companies. They want game jams to introduce a new technology, to bring more people inside their own technology. So we do that for hire. We also do events for hire. So if you want to do a game jam on site, or you want to do a sports esports thing, or you want to do a talk, so workshops, so like we can be hired to do that Indie Heroes in general, a service company. We also do incubations, like we hire a lot by the government to do incubation programs, especially in Brazil. And we also do acceleration program together with Exola that we are running that's worldwide. Also, we're hired to do that too. And Indie Hero has also introduction part of it. Like we do business rounds and we bring publishers, investors, and possible people that need outsourcing and then connect them with the studios that we accelerated, incubated, and the one that showed more potential. So that's what Indie Hero does. And that's like my goal, my role on all that is to be the face of the company. So I'm here in the podcast, but also to do the commercial parts and to build the culture in the company and so on. So that's a little bit about it.
Yeah, and you know what? I really love that in sharing all this, you really led well with that why, because I don't think enough of us think about the why behind we do these things, and it's such a driving factor, right? So I just had to call out to that and commend you on that because again, I don't think. I mean, we get the whys to some degree, but you are like right there in the forefront, and I think it sends a strong positive message that maybe we could all learn from a little bit. So thank you for doing that.
Super great. I think it's my life become better when I start making decisions based on my personal value and my personal why.
Mm,
So when I build a company, I also a big fan of Simon Sinek. The book starts with the why, so I'm super fan of him.
yep.
So that's why like the first thing, okay, why we're doing this, because entrepreneurship is hard. Like anyone that tells different is lying to you. Entrepreneurship is super hard to build a company, super hard to manage people, is incredible hard. Like to do sales, to get someone to get money outside their pockets and give to you is also super, super hard.
Yeah.
And I think if we don't have a clear why, we just give up, because if you make just for the money, you're not gonna make it. So it's important for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And great example too. And that's a great book, great TED talk too. And yeah, it's knowing your why is important. So awesome. Well, really appreciate you sharing that stuff and learning more about the company. But you know what? I want to take a moment to have myself and everyone listening here get to know you a little bit more. And we're going to do that through the Q Box round. And folks, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's just a few random questions I prepared here today for Juliana to get to know her a little bit more. So, are you ready for the Q Box round?
I hope so.
All right. Well, you're going in, so here we go. All right.
Yeah.
First is name one thing that motivates you every day.
I think the thing that motivated me more like every day is definitely my why. I think we talked a little bit about that. After I had some time a bad past in my life where I used to be an engineer.
Mm,
It was a sad life for me. And I got some pretty bad shape there. I went through depression and everything.
mm,
And then I felt that at that point I was just surviving, like doing things to be functional,
yeah,
like,
yeah. Going
but
through the
not
motions and
actually, yeah. And then I decided I'm not gonna survive anymore. I'm gonna live. And that's where
nice.
I put like my values down, and then I stopped doing decisions that seemed right, like the job that's paying the most, or
Yeah.
like
Yep.
those decisions that we do because we think they are right, and start doing decisions based on what I believe in and my why. And that's really motivates me every day to wake up and see that I'm living and not surviving.
Yeah,
That's for me.
I love that outlook. It's like, really being positive. It's like what am I doing now to fulfill me to and 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 if you look with that lens, of course you're going to be motivated every day and I absolutely love that. And you know what? I appreciate too you sharing, something that's pretty close and personal to you about that too. But you know what? I'm not just grateful. I'm also happy because a lot of us don't share this type of thoughts and feelings and stuff. And I think more of us need to hear it because there's lots of us that are probably in similar situations. So thank you and for
Yes.
doing that. Next is what's the most helpful or impactful advice that you ever received?
Um, not wanting to be like a groupie girl, but I have to cite Simon Sinek here again. In his next book, The Infinity Game. When I read The Infinity Game, things change for me
Mm,
because like normally we compare ourselves to a lot of people with Instagram and social media and so on. It's
yes.
super hard not to do it. So we're always thinking we are behind in life,
Hmm.
we're late, we are not good enough, like we don't have our six pack yet, and doing like all the traveling that people do and so on. And then we have sometimes difficulties to start something new, or we are more afraid to leave something behind that's not serving us anymore. But the idea to start something from zero makes us so nervous because we feel behind.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm too old to do this, or I'm too old to do that. And like Instagram, you see people like 21 billionaires and so on, like living the lives, and you're like, oh my God, I'm not that, you know? So the Infinity Game gives the concept that's not the game doesn't end. So if it doesn't end, the real winner is the one that keeps playing it.
Yeah.
Like because there's no end to it. Like so you're not behind if you keep playing it. You're still winning the game.
Yeah.
So maybe someone that you know seems to be in a faster pace than you or something like that gave up, I don't know, health for it or something else, or in 30 years, I don't know, maybe something or not, doesn't matter. But we are living an infinity game. In an infinity game, the winners are the one that keep playing. If you think like that, you can start new things. You can be happy that you don't have your six pack, but still going to the gym three times a week. You're going to be happy that you're still doing small things every day to the goals that you want to build. And those goals can also change because the game doesn't have an end. So for me, that changed my life when I started to see life like that. It helped me make big decisions and leave engineer behind and do other stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And see, I was already seeing that connection, how it related to your first response, and you're right. Like, hey, compare and despair. Well, you don't want to do that, but also, you know, just because you're not getting ahead where what feels like. I mean, motivations change. Like, we change as people, and what our interests are and stuff, and looking at things with that whole, you know growth mindset opposed to a limited one is I love how you describe that as like playing that infinity game. And such a good one. I'm speechless, but we'll move on so I don't
I
rant.
it's to Simon Sinek. But anyway.
All right, last but not least, and the staple here on the show is, what game are you playing now?
So playing Pokemon TGC, but I got a little bit bored with that. The coin thing doesn't. I hate it. I was like getting angry and started like really tuning out with the game.
Hmm.
So people said to me I should play Spirit Fairs. The game you don't get angry and you chill and it's like more cozy and
Yes.
so on. So I'm looking to start that one right now.
Oh, nice. I need to play that. I think actually the only time and first time, yeah, well, clearly, that I played that was, I think, and it's happening at the time that we're recording this now. I think, what, 3, 4 years ago at PAX East, they had a booth there, and I think it was just before release. And I was exhausted and tired, and they had some noise canceling headsets, and I put them on, and oh my goodness, I got in such a zen mode. Like, it was like I never have an experience where I feel completely immersed in a game at a convention like PAX, but it was so good. So I'm excited for you because I think anyone who's played that outside of a convention probably has a better experience, but I remember it vividly, so it was pretty cool. Awesome. Well, looking forward to that. And sorry that Pokemon was getting a little tiring, but hey, things change, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, hey, thank you, Juliana, for sharing more about yourself. But now let's get into the conversation here. And what I led in with in the intro, folks, was how to turn jams into plans and opportunities. And man, so many great things that I'm excited to talk about. But to kick things off, Juliana, a lot of devs they love game jams for that, creative rush that we see and everything. But what do you think that they're missing once a jam, or let's say even a short-term project, is over?
Yeah, it's the problem. Everybody's excited to
Hmm.
do the game they love, to do an art they love. And in the game jam, you normally don't have to think about actually selling the game or if there's commercial look to the game. So you can just like be 100% creative and like do whatever you like. But for me, it's just like eating ice cream or some candy. It's super nice, but it ends, like it
Yeah.
doesn't leave a legacy. That's why we did Game Jam Plus, because you think, okay, game jams are nice, but in a week, none of those games exist anymore, none of those teams exist anymore. And so as our goal is to democratize the game knowledge and help build game economies all over the world, we need more companies to do that. So our goal is to create companies also. So that's why we do the incubation, the acceleration,
Yeah. Yeah.
So after some time you can do the game jam, you can have the high, the hush, but then you can work with those people for months and months, and you can see if they're good business partners for you or not,
Hmm.
if your game has a commercial side to it or not. Maybe you have to rethink and get the knowledge also. So the second time or third time you do it, you're already going to do with the thinking, oh, let's do a small market research in Steam. Let's see the tags that are going on. Let's,
Yeah. Yeah.
look the mobile market is in that way, instead of just, oh, I love Metroidvania games. Let's do one. Like
Yeah.
how much does a Metroidvania game click costs? Like
Right. Yeah. I mean, I love that. And one thing that you said that really stood out to me was, focusing on building the legacy. And, I think that says a whole lot there. And it also speaks to like having the right intent, and not necessarily the right intent, but having a different perspective on what intent actually means when you're approaching something like game jams, or even, short projects. On this podcast, there's been a few other developers and studios I have spoken with, and some of them actually attribute to and a lot use this too for everything from prototyping all the way down to what they say is why they're successful is because of those projects, and focusing on like participating in game jams and stuff, because there's so much that you learn from that. But then combining that with what you just said, building that legacy, I mean, that can be a really powerful tool, especially for those of us that want to, build something, let's say, more sustainable than a hobby project.
yes,
So
that's totally our goal is that. And also, like we see today, also teams participating in game jams that, as you said, wanted to test a new technology. So like
yeah.
when blockchain was high, they said, okay, we never did a game blockchain, let's go to a game jam. Do as already a studio, they're already like working full time in the game industry, but they want to try a new technology. So we see a lot of people coming to try new technologies. But at Game Jam Plus specifically, we see a lot of people coming to try to find business partners, because it is so long, Game Jam Plus, that really makes it possible to work with someone for 8 months and decide, should I do a company with this person or not?
Yeah.
Because that's a big decision you had to do that we normally don't think that much about it when we're choosing, but it's a little bit like marriage. Like
Yeah.
you really have
Yeah.
to put your mind into deciding who you're going to build a business with, because the main reason business breaks are because of partnerships. So
Yes. I mean, that's always, or generally a lot of times the case. And I'm sure there's other things too, outside of partnerships too, that can, cause that, things not to work out the way that, people intended. I'm a little bit curious too, because, you know, the idea that people have around game jams, right? They're short term and everything. And I know we mentioned it briefly about that rush. How is it possible that, teams, whether they're part of Game Jam Plus, or even other, jams and such, how can they get beyond, that jam high and actually act on, building that more and what they created. Like they spent time and energy creating this. How can they like build off of this more and not just run off of that high, like that ice cream you were talking about?
I really like something you said when you said like going with intent. Like I think that's really a great advice for, like intent is brings a lot in life. So you go into a game jam, you don't want to end in a weekend. So go with that intent to the game jam, and you're probably gonna meet other people and like speak about it, like be open about, hey, I just don't want this to be a weekend project, and try to find people there that also have the same mindset. And I think that's pretty good way of getting a little bit over the high if you go with the intent of already
Mm.
being more than that. So I think that's really something pretty interesting. And besides that, we have like incubations and acceleration programs all over the world. So after you do your game jam and you have like this project, apply to one. Like maybe you get in, maybe the idea was good enough, even though it was made on a weekend, and you get accepted to those incubations or acceleration programs. I am in an association of incubators and accelerators together with like IDDA, we call SEED, and it's association for all game incubations and accelerations all over the world. And I know just in our association, we are about 120. So that means in the world, 120 incubators and accelerators that got time and did the association thing, And the association is like 3 years old, just 3 years old. So in 3 years, we found 120 incubators and accelerations all over the world. So I think there is enough going around that if you look to like IGDA or you look at a local association, get to connect with them, they're going to point you the right way.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add to that too, you're absolutely right. Like when it comes to that intent and then following up on that, like, hey, take it to another step, especially if you're like, hey, there could be something here. Why don't we explore this a little bit more? And obviously it's okay if you're like, hey, that's my thing. I'm good. I don't want to do anything else. That's completely cool too. But I love that you did that too. And it mentioned about, all these other organizations, not just yours, but so many others that are these incubators and such. One thing I'll call too is like, going back to what you said before, thinking with that plentiful mindset, like don't worry about something new, or let's say they're not accepting you. Like don't let fear dictate. Cause one thing I'll call out is I there's a situation I was working with someone before and I saw this incubator and I was like between, the offerings and mentors and all these other things that this provided. I was like, this is a great opportunity to just try and get used to this process. I mean, and this one in particular was asking for lots of information, a lot of stuff that I think most people starting out or in game jams don't necessarily have, especially for a game jam project. But it gave you a good idea of like, oh, how do you position yourself? Put together a pitch deck, and yeah, it's a lot of scary unknown stuff for some people, but man, it starts putting you through the motions. And the more that you're doing that, and even if you get that rejection, all of those things are valuable assets you can use for whatever other time in the future, whether it's for a new game. Now you went through that process. It's not going to be as much work and everything else. And there's just so much that can come out of what you just said, like, hey, go out, apply. Even if you don't know of what you need and some things are completely foreign or new to you, at least now you have a better understanding than you did before or later when it actually is going to matter to you a lot more.
Yeah, totally. And as you said, if you get rejected and if you think that it's an infinity game, the game's not over,
Exactly.
because you
Yeah.
did not stop playing. You can apply again next year or to another one, like a rejection doesn't mean you lose the game.
Yeah.
Losing would be getting a rejection and not applying again,
Yeah.
like,
And or
so,
quitting or whatever else, right? Or just stopping
yeah.
and stop. So no, I love that perspective. And I know one of the things I mentioned it briefly, and I know it's something that you guys do too, and I'm sure a lot of others, you know, mentorship in some of these incubators and such is I would say is important, but like just so everyone listening today, what kind of a role does mentorship play in helping devs recognize whether it's their project's commercial potential or even how it could help them structure their business?
Yeah, I think better than a commercial potential because like who actually knows, like
Yeah.
we if anyone knew the game that would work, this person would be like a billionaire because even the AAA studios get wrong, like
Yeah. Yeah.
and so like commercial potential, I always look at this and I say like who actually know those stuff, like nobody, not even they had hundreds of publishers, they get wrong all the time. Like
Yep.
we have seen after and after publishers publishing games that flopped, like it is a numbers game. And then you see like Review, the creator of Angry Birds, they did like 49 games before they got to Angry Birds. Like who's to say that like, oh, this one has the commercial potential, So I think it's more like about finding the team that had like the team potential,
Mm.
like as a group, as a company. So I think the mentors will find the teams that are willing to listen because most of us are not normally. They're willing to listen to feedback and the ones that actually continue after the jam. So that's why I don't like to do my clients in Indie Hero that hire me to do a game jam. I always tell them like I don't like to do just game jams. Like a weekend, what you're gonna get from a weekend. Like let's do at least a 1 month incubation after, or let's do a preparation after. Because then you're gonna have teams that are willing to learn new technology, new stuff. You're gonna find teams that are willing to accept feedback, and that's coming back to like learning and those are the teams with potential because those are the teams that are going to keep going like 3 years after and each project's going to be better than the other one and at some point because it's a numbers game they're going to do a game with commercial potential like it can
Mm.
be in 1 year or two it can take 10 years to do it like some companies like just here in Brazil a company that was running for 13 years, doing outsourcing, trying to launch their own IP, not getting it right, but they kept on it, and now they launched the game, the Mullage Magic, and the game already sold over 1 million copies and so on. But that was only possible because they kept going for 13 years, even though the IPs before did not work. And they kept learning, they kept doing the incubation thing, the acceleration thing, they participated in several projects they kept hiring mentors and so on and learning all the time. They spent the last 13 years really learning and getting this feedback inside. So I think about this.
I love that because now that I'm looking at this question again, it's like you can see how it does make sense, right? But like saying, what role does this help with, a game's commercial potential? But it's like but how I sorry if I'm like self-analyzing my own questions, folks, here, but I think it's important to the point that Juliana just made. But like if we're just looking like us as developers, studios, and everything are just looking at the end result being a game's commercial success or potential. That's like really the outcome that we're looking for. But as Juliana called out to, and rightfully so, when it comes to mentorships or things along that, or just in general, it's really about the team's potential and through the example that you shared with Angry Birds, was it Raw, they had all those other titles, and you mentioned a few others that had all these other games, all this other experience, and it was that potential that the team had and the grit that they had and perseverance and just doing everything they could to keep moving on and forward. It's really the potential behind that leads to the commercial potential. Even if a game is like highly like likely to blast it out of the park, you still need the right team to put it together, because if you don't have the right team that has that potential, they could have the best project that could blow up and do really well in their hands, and nothing could come of it. Because kind of like they say sometimes, like ideas are a dime a dozen. It's all about the execution and who are the people that are executing on it.
Certainly. I think a game that has an okay idea but was super well executed will perform better than the best idea but not so well executed.
Yeah, absolutely, and well said. And it puts things into other perspectives too, in terms of the value that we've talked about this before on the show, but the value put into your team culture, and even if you're a small team or a solo dev, I mean, that comes then down to, your intent and what reasons are. And when you, let's say, hire just contractors or stuff, that intent still relates to the culture and understanding, and all these things play hand in hand with each other in terms of leading to that level of, whatever your goals are, whatever you define success to be. So really, really great stuff. And thank you for like really tearing that apart, because it's absolutely right. It comes down to your team, or that intent more so than that idea. Cause who knows, like that's just what's needed. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk little bit more on, let's say, even the business and marketing side of stuff. You know, what would you say are some, I don't know, common business or marketing blind spots, that you see, some of these indie teams that are coming out of jams? Like they get in there, they're excited, and let's say they want to take another step and have that intent to, start building that legacy. But what are some, issues that happen as they're moving forward?
I think the main issue that I normally see is that everybody wants to think about the game they want to do, but not with about the people that are going to play the game when it's ready.
Mm.
So they're always thinking, oh, I want to do this game and so on. I don't know if you heard about it. Like some people talk about the ikigai of games. Ikigai is a Japanese concept of like getting some stuff from your life and found the center of it. So the ikigai of game would be like a game that I can do, that my team is able to perform,
Mm.
a game that I in the genre that we like. So everybody in the team actually likes that type of game. So that's also common play. But also a game that people want to play. There is a market viability to it and so on. So like when you put these three things together, I can execute, it's something we like and people want to play. Then we have the resources, the right resources to do it. You have kind of ikigai of game. So I think that's something people just normally play, like the games that I like. They don't think if they can actually execute this or who is the market need these games. So that's one point. And the second one, because they don't think about that, they don't think about sales, they don't think about the marketing. And every time I ask, so what's your marketing strategy to sell this game? And people say, like, I will find a publisher. That's
Yes.
the marketing strategy. To find a publisher. And I was like, okay, so Jason Hawker did some statistics about it, and he talked like he did some research with a lot of publishers, and he got to the number that for 1,000 pitches that publisher sees, they end up closing 1.16 deal.
Yes. Yep.
That's 0.16% of people that actually get to the point of pitching the game actually gonna close the deal.
Hmm.
Doesn't seem like a smart marketing strategy to work with these kind of numbers. So if you do a game already thinking about self-publishing, already thinking about the buyer of this game, you can use the doing of the game to build your own community, to bring people already in since like the first day. Just document your game jam, like we're starting this new project, put everything on social media, start growing your like base, your Discord server, and so on and so on. And I think that's the main thing people miss on game jams, like the business and marketing side of it, and just, oh, I'll find a publisher.
Yeah, it's like it kind of maybe feeds that mentality, possibly feeds into that rush idea, or the ice cream. It's like we're still living in that moment that we just got our cone of fill in your favorite ice cream there, and we haven't gone beyond that, and we're still, and I think a lot of times that can relate to like passion, right? We're still being fueled by passion, but passion alone. It's not getting extended or being understanding of other things that relate to things, especially if you're looking to go the commercial route, on a business perspective, or marketing and stuff, which again, just go hand in hand. One quick thing I want to apologize for, but mention why I laughed a brief moment when you mentioned Ikigai, because it's when you were talking about earlier in your Q box round, that's the book that came up in my mind. And then later you
Okay.
just happened to mention it. And I actually have two copies on my bookshelf behind me. But folks, for those of you who aren't familiar, and I love how you associated that principle and concept with games because I think it's absolutely brilliant and is so it's just cool. But Ikigai is basically, I'm not going to go into any details here, but it's a Japanese concept that's basically translated as a reason for being. So in this context, what Juliana shared is a reason for your game to exist, essentially. What is the reason? Again, what is the why behind, these types of things? So I love that analogy you made there. And I'll even throw that a link to that book. It doesn't relate to games at all, folks, but with this kind of application, or at least what you started right here, potentially, Juliana, maybe we can create this ikigai of gaming.
The gaming guy, let's do it.
Yes, I love it. But anyways, I digress for a moment there, but really good. I think well worth it.
So I have a newsletter on LinkedIn, and I wrote a text about the game Ikigai, so people can check that later also if they want.
Oh, awesome. Well, I might have to get your link about that, and we'll throw that in the show notes too. Great stuff. We were talking, a bit about, hey, you do a game jam, and what if you want to go to that next step to be, more business or marketing focused? You know, Great. They want that. They understand. Some of us understand that there's some gaps, like, oh, I can't just go with this idea or dream of, oh, I'll find a publisher, right? So, in light of that, how would you say that, devs or studios, can fill in some of these knowledge gaps? And like, is there any kind of, support you feel that is, I don't know, most effective of helping teams gain not just momentum, but also like understanding and what can lead them maybe towards getting that momentum? Because you can't just go from like 0 to 60 in most cases.
Yeah, for me, I just gonna come back to those all those incubators and accelerators programs all over the world to get some like mentorship. But also you can go to game events if you are able to afford it. So like GDC and Gamescom, and like every country has their own game events. You go there, you connect with people, you're gonna learn a bunch from people that are doing that longer than you. So if you be humble and put your listening ear on it, you're gonna go like super far. If you don't have the money, if you don't have like an accelerator incubator next year, and don't have the money to go to those events that can be sometimes very expensive, you can always start on YouTube. They're incredible channels, or listen to podcasts like this one. But like GDC put a lot of the talks they do on YouTube for free. They of course have the GDC vault, but after they put most of the talks for free. Like if you just go to GDC YouTube and like watch all those talks right there, you're gonna like improve 5 years in a month or something like that, just to hearing those amazing people talking and learning from them. So I think that's, you have to search for knowledge.
Yeah. And, folks, I know sometimes, I have said before, coaches and mentorships, and obviously these other programs too are very helpful. But, for some of us, just having that one on one type of support can be helpful, but also understandably hard to find. And, sometimes these things aren't necessarily accessible. But I mean, the tip that you provided, Juliana, just going and watching those videos is a great start. A lot of times, too, the people giving those talks are very open and receptive to new people coming in. I mean, I think they would expect that, being as open as they are, probably doing a talk, and chances are they've done more than just that, and helping, the industry and the community in their own way. And another one too is, because I know this is always a big and hard thing sometimes for people. I'll just say there's been several people on this podcast, two of which have been my own coaches, and some of them I just simply met through Reddit, having a conversation and staying in touch. So, simple networking and like, just talking to people. But also if anybody is looking for something like a mentorship or specific, I mean, there has been several people on this podcast that may or may not have advertised it specifically in the interview, but are also open. So if that's the case, feel free to reach out. But again, Juliana's suggestions and, she's probably a great resource to consider too, whether it relates to the work she does or outside of that. So I just always say that because I know it's always a big problem for people to try to find the mentor. Like, what do I do? How do I approach it? And all these other things. It's like, yeah, just start somewhere and getting some information. And, honestly, those talks are probably one of the best ways you could go about it. So thank you for that, Juliana.
I never seen industry so open to give back before
Yeah.
I got inside game industry. Like everybody was so willing to explain me because I'm new in the industry. I just have like 4 years in the industry. So everybody was like super willing to explain even like stupid stuff, like what's Unreal, like I started at that point 4 years ago, like what's Unreal, never heard about it. And then everybody was like super patient to answer my questions in events that were like super stupid. And it still makes a bunch of them because I'm still super new in the industry compared to people that have been doing this for like 30 years and so on. So I never saw industry so willing to give back and mentor and answer. Like it's a super inviting industry. It's great. I feel super privileged and happy to be working in this industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, well, there's another side tangent. If you're looking for mentors, there's some great ideas on where you can kind of start. And again, you couldn't ask for a better industry to kind of reach out and just, see and learn from other people. Getting back to this idea about like, hey, how do we take these jams to the next level and approach it from a business and marketing perspective? Why would you say too? Because I feel this is important, but why is it that positioning, especially in crowded marketplaces? I mean, of course, the whole industry is pretty much a crowded marketplace. It's so critical, especially for indie studios. And what are things that you would suggest, or how should teams approach it? This idea and positioning.
I think to do a game is hard. And if you do like one day you do a shooter, the next day you do a horror game, the next day you do a roguelike and so on, you never actually get better like in any of them. You're just like changing it. So you're always in the beginning of that type of game.
Mm.
So I think if you get a niche and position yourself, like I'm gonna do horror games, like I'm gonna do shooter games, I'm gonna do this or that, Um, the first game you're going to learn a bunch and you're going to apply that to the second game and the third game, and the chances of like maybe the fourth or the fifth game being super commercial potential and so on gets bigger and bigger because you learn about it. So if you're always not positioning yourself and always changing what you're doing, it's pretty hard to get good. And that's with anything. Like if I start swimming today and tomorrow I start playing volleyball and after basketball, I'm never going to get good at any of those sports. It's hard because to continue doing like a similar type of game and still not making sales, you need grit for that. You need to handle well frustration. And we know how hard it is to handle frustration, especially every new generation that comes handles frustration like worst. So yeah, it's hard, but that's why I think you should position. And the second point why you should do it is because publishers are looking, like publishers are, there's so much offer today in the game market that publishers are looking to reduce the risk. Like that's their business. They want to less risk. And because of that, they are looking already for games with some traction. So games already have some followers, games that already have one viral video, games that already have like a community. So if you position yourself in a type of game, like of course you can always bring like subgenres to a game, but like, oh, we're gonna do horror and horror with shooter or horror with, like you can always have a wiggle place right there. Yeah.
Mm.
But if you position yourself, your target audience is not going to change. And you keep building this community for your company as you keep doing games. And this community will help you increase your chances enormously to get a publisher at some point. So I think there's two reasons to position yourself in a type of game. And those are my main reasons.
Yeah, and I'll speak a bit too to your second one, because this comes up a lot where I always find it, and I know when you're starting out and there's that initial project you have and you're passionate about, and you also have, let's say, a bunch of other ideas that could be all over the place in terms of, let's just say, genre, right? Or even, but I've seen it time and time again where if you just focus on a particular audience, and that audience can be a little bit broad, it doesn't have to be hyper focused, and I'm not talking, I'm saying, like, from a legacy perspective or future plan perspective. If you're focusing on a fairly a good sized audience that can relate to this type of game experience in this one, but not so, like, let's say, like an RPG all the way down to a fighting game. That might be a little bit extreme and too much variety
Yeah.
there. But if you're really honing in and focusing on this, and your projects are slightly changing and evolving around that audience, you, you're just building off of that audience and giving yourself that much more of an opportunity to get momentum. Whereas if you're doing a bunch of various games and all over the place, like a Metroidvania, RPG, and now you're doing a fighting game, you're basically building up these audiences from scratch every time. And as Juliana's already said, even with the business, it's no different. That's a lot of work to start this up again and again and again. Even though the company's established, the audiences aren't. So it's just creating a lot of, and that's where, like, positioning is really important. And sometimes I know people don't think, and you know what, publishers think the same way too. Not all of them, and they haven't, but that's because I think, times have changed. Like, from a couple decades ago, that wasn't such as, I think, an important factor as it is now. And I'll do a quick call out. I mean, look at Hooded Horse. That's one of the reasons why they're so good at what they do, is because of how they position themselves in the market and what types of games they're doing. And they're broadening strategically, as opposed to just like, hey, let's be another variety publisher. That wouldn't jive or work well for them. And I think the results kind of speak for themselves too. Sorry, tangent.
I was like, Woody, with everything.
But no, loved what you said. Those 2 points about, this is why we really have to think about how we're positioning ourselves and such. So, well, Juliana, I know we're coming on time. This has been such a fun and an engaging conversation. But, in light of that, what we covered, what are some, like, tips, suggestions, or anything that you would like to share, some takeaways for our listeners today?
I think for me is do the jams, like go to them, have fun, improve, find people like-minded. Like jam is also a great way to network with the
Mm,
mentors, get inside the industry. Like I think the best way you can get inside the industry. I see already several studios. Like I have some cities in the world that Game Jam Plus became a little bit more famous, and studios of the region start using the Game Jam Plus first phase as a hiring place. Like they
mhm,
started like going there as mentors, like sending their employees as mentors to find good people to hire, good juniors to hire. So it is a great way to network. So do the jams, go with intent, go with like listening ears. You don't have to accept all feedback they give to you. Not
mm,
all feedback is good, but you don't need to, you can just listen and then
yeah,
do what you think it's right. You don't have to, how to say that in English? English is not my first language,
that's
but
okay.
like, you don't have to get inside a discussion about it,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
don't do that.
yeah,
It's terrible.
yeah.
Nobody wants to work with confrontational people all the time.
Right. And you don't have to take it to heart either. It's like, because sometimes feedback can be helpful and sometimes it can be horrible. It's all about how you approach it.
Yeah. So do the jams, do the incubation acceleration things. They are awesome. And normally, like I know because of the association, a lot of incubators and accelerators, they don't fill out all the places they have.
Mm.
Like they have like 20 spots and just to fill out 15 or so. I see that all the time happening because people are not applying enough. So go apply. Maybe sometimes you just have to fill the form to be accepted. Like you don't
Yeah.
have even to have like a really good project or team. You just have to fill the form and you'll be accepted. So don't let the form or don't let your fear or don't let your doubts stop you to do that. And third, go to events. Events are a great way to network, meet people, learn. Like I learned half of what I know today going to events. So it helped me enormously to get inside the industry and do the right connections and learn really from people that are doing this for years and years and know way more than me. So I think that would be my three takeaways from our talk today.
Awesome. Well, I really can't thank you enough. And I hope folks that there's a lot here that you can, take with you and apply in whatever you're doing on your journey because, there's so much that you can be doing and that you will be doing, but you also have to stay focused to some degree. But hey, the possibilities are still endless. And I think Juliana made that extremely clear. Well, before we depart, please, are there any links you can drop or ways that people can reach out, connect? Please share with us what those are.
Perfect. So I already told you I'm at LinkedIn. I think you guys can share the link later. So please find me at LinkedIn. I always answer everybody that send me the text. Sometimes takes a week, but I always answer them. I also have this newsletter going on in LinkedIn if you guys want to keep up with what we're doing. But at Instagram, we have at Game Jam Plus. So if you are more like entry on the market, want to get the first steps on it, that would be the place to go. If you're already a company and want to hear more about like company stuff, then that's at indiehero.io. Our company, this company is more focused on really business people that are already running their game and so on. And I produce content in Portuguese, but if anyone knows a little bit, I do produce content on my private account on Instagram. That's at JSI Brito. So I think that's
All right, excellent. So lots of ways to connect with Juliana today. So, hey, we can't thank you enough for being here today and sharing everything that you did. And folks, again, I hope that there's so much here that you can walk away with so you can turn those jams or projects into plans and opportunities. Juliana, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here on the show today.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for having me and doing this invitation. I was super happy to get to be here today talking with you. I had a great talk.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.